Hi, guys. I hope everybody's having a good day. I'm going to wait a couple of minutes here for some viewers to join us. There's a couple of people that said they wanted to watch tonight, so specifically. I had a very, very busy day today. Lots and lots. Hello. Lots and lots and lots of errands. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my screen there. Lots of errands, lots of work to do. Hello. You have a good day today, Jen? So basically tonight I'm going to be continuing in my continuing what I started on Monday. That would be pulling apart Bob Ferguson. Looking a little deeper into him as a person and some of his lawsuits and what exactly it is that that seems to be going on. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I am not a politician. I am not a psychiatrist, psychologist, any sort of professional. I'm a citizen. But the thing about being just a citizen is we have the power of knowledge. We have the power to educate ourselves. We have the power to look into anybody we want to. And as long as we check sources, that power could prove to be a very good thing. That power can be used to protect us or protect our rights, our constitutional rights. And in this instance, I think it can be used to protect our Second Amendment rights, because right now they are under fire, and they are under fire hard. And Bob Ferguson seems to be one of the people leading that charge. So I'm going to get right into it. I might go a little bit fast. If I do, tell me to slow down. All right. So we're going to start off in a lawsuit filed in September of 2017 by various members of the media, various members of the press, after they made requests of all 147 members of the Washington State Legislature seeking records, personal records, emails, calendars, agendas, things like that, under the rules of the state's Public Records Act of 1972. The judge reached out to the Attorney General's office and asked the Attorney General to weigh in on the subject before he made a ruling. The legislature's argument was that that information is protected, is not covered under the Public Records Act of 72. The Attorney General's office responded with a 14-page brief, in the brief stating individual legislative offices, their officers, employees, and other legislative agencies plainly fall within this broad coverage. The state legislature was primarily Republican at the time. So that was his opinion about whether or not they had to submit all these personal records, personal emails, not government emails, personal ones, right? Okay, so then we have when he was very aggressively targeting Republicans a couple of years ago, trying to enforce campaign finance laws against them. And during that process, some of his Democratic allies, some of his biggest supporters, got exposed as violating those same laws. So he was then forced to launch the same sorts of actions against his Democratic allies. Now, during that whole fiasco, the Republican targets of his suits suffered enormous penalties. I read one man had a fine of $425,000. All right. Well, the Democratic allies, they were given comparably small fines. I think the largest one I saw was $32,800. And extended payment options to make a payment every 6 months for 4 years until it was paid off. His Republican targets were not offered any such generosity whatsoever. Most of the allies that received those gentle slap on the wrists comparatively were Democratic organizations who supported him during his 2016 campaign. All right, they supported him during that campaign. And he said, okay, well, yeah, you broke the law, but it's all right. Don't worry about it, right? Okay, so the ones who oppose him, he aggressively and angrily pursues and punishes excessively. And now let's talk about what he's doing on behalf of Washington State to our federal government, specifically the Trump administration. He continues to file lawsuits. He's up to 32 right now, current lawsuits against the Trump administration. And I can quote him. He's many times can be quoted as saying, he has to keep our president and the Trump administration accountable to the rule of law. So let's talk about that just for a second, okay? Let's talk about that rule of law for a minute. The rule of law is his primary job, is to enforce and make sure the laws in very specific areas are being followed. Okay? He's the Attorney General. Yes, he's supposed to launch lawsuits if laws are being broken, but he's supposed to do it equally. He is not entitled to pick and choose who he punishes, how severely they get punished, or what lawbreakers to ignore. Yet, as you'll see in a few minutes, I can establish a pattern of him doing exactly that, picking and choosing. So let's move on from that for just a second. The Alliance for Gun Responsibility. Everybody knows who they are. You know, they have an extremely anti-gun agenda. Their proposal to Seattle City Council regarding gun legislation, gun restrictions, firearm restrictions, extended background checks, and forced safe gun storage, resulting in criminal penalties if you do not store your gun properly. They proposed that to Seattle City Council. Seattle City Council approved it. And then they got sued. Not by Bob Ferguson, though. They got sued because of state preemption. Okay? So now keep in mind, our Attorney General is the one that puts legislation on the legislature's agenda. All right. He's the one that decides what the legislature is going to decide on, what they're going to look at, what's important enough for them to look at and hear and review and vote on. Okay. So the list, I posted a list of the legislation after I saw a post on another page about him reintroducing all the anti-gun legislation. My husband and I, we went through and we got a list of gun legislation, pro and anti, right? Now, after the city of Seattle, and the city of Edmonds was also involved in that suit. There was 2 lawsuits filed, one against Seattle, one against Edmonds. And they both lost, okay? They both lost under state preemption. Now, I'm sure you guys are aware of this. I don't know how much media coverage it was, but they both lost, right? So the very next legislative session, guess what's on the agenda? Repealing state preemption. Okay? So now we have these gun control laws that Seattle wanted for their city. Cool, okay. And they got told, no, you can't do that because it's more restrictive than the state laws. So what did they do? They then came up with a whole bunch of crap. All right. Now, Bob Ferguson proposed 4 bills that I did go over in one of my previous live videos. One of those bills being 5444, another one being number 5050, and their companion bills. All right. Now you take, I already went over this in another video, but you take bits and pieces of all of those and put them together, and you put them together with what the Alliance for Gun Responsibility was proposing to the city of Seattle, and you have 1639, right? So there you go. We know who came up with that, right? So the big question about 1639 right now is constitutionality, right? It's not constitutional at all. But yet he continues to pursue our president for his violations of immigrants' constitutional rights. Okay? Now, I'm not touching that subject in a lot of detail, but I would like to point out that while he is pointing the finger at our president, spending our tax dollars from the state of Washington, you know, from Washingtonians, to pursue our president, he's violating the Constitution himself, right? So he's picking and choosing again and deciding unilaterally what is and isn't constitutional. So he has that power, right? All right. All right, so let's talk about the 2019 agenda, specifically for the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, right? The 2019 agenda lines up again with Bob Ferguson, right? So they were in line a couple years ago with 1639 and 5444 and 5050. And now they're lining up again with the high capacity magazines, removing state preemption. They want to do that. Greg, that would be fantastic. Actually, I actually referred to that just a few moments ago. Scott Brower, I'm getting to that point. Here in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to talk about recall and the information that I found about what it takes to recall someone. Definitions of the words and grounds, basically. Again, I'm not an attorney, though. All right. So Ferguson's reintroduction of previously failed bills for gun control expanding ERPOs, limiting open carry, and high capacity magazines. That's the Alliance's agenda. And if you guys look in that list of previously proposed anti-gun legislation that we posted earlier, I think it was yesterday, all of these things are in there. They're already there. And so the Alliance's agenda, again, immediately lines up with Bob Ferguson's anti-gun push. 100%, right? Okay. So let's talk about something that that he's done that's shady, right? Like, definitely, no question, it's shady. Okay. Now remember, what I just said about the Public Records Act of 1972. All right. So, in a letter written to Mark Scholler, responding to Republican members of the legislature that inquired anonymously regarding his lawsuits, his many, many lawsuits against the federal government, to summarize his response, he vehemently responds, defending his actions, bragging of past successes, justifying these frivolous lawsuits by the fact that he was previously successful a couple of times, and stating that the cost to taxpayers was minimal. In that letter, he never lists an amount. He never lists an amount. He just says, don't worry about it, it's minimal. And some of it's even free because, oh, we're partnering with other states. So what, the other states' taxpayers are paying for his crap? I don't like that. He ends that letter with a challenge statement. Any senators who believe I should not be taking action to protect, I summarized it with the word Washingtonians, but he specifically stated women, children, veterans, okay? They should contact me directly. That's manipulation straight out. It's a guilt trip. He guilt tripped the Republican inquiry. He guilt tripped them. Said, no, why are you asking me this? I don't have to justify myself to you. So, so he essentially refused to answer the inquiry. All right. But what about the Public Records Act of 1972 that he said forced the Republican legislators to reveal their records to the press, right? Yet he wouldn't even completely disclose the cost of all these lawsuits to the taxpayers when he was asked about it by state legislators, right? Our state legislators that were doing their jobs and trying to make sure he was doing his and not costing us, the taxpayers, a lot of money, right? He wouldn't answer that. Nope. Refused to. He refuses to be held accountable to the same rule of law that he's trying to hold the United States president accountable to. Okay? All right. Now let's talk about him a little bit more personally. On his Facebook page. Now I'm going to transition this, go back to 1639 for just a second. A big issue I have with 1639, I don't like any of it. I don't approve of any of it. But the one thing that I noticed is repeated throughout the bill is in every place where it was the sheriff or the city law enforcement officer doing our background checks and approving our licenses to concealed carry and all of that, the state was added. Okay, the state. Well, the State Department of Licensing already has rights to the records of who has a CPL, etc. They have that under previous laws. All right, so this new addition to the state concerns me. Now, on his own Facebook page, he states, quote, I worked with Representative Tina Orwell to pass legislation giving me the authority to enforce special consumer protections. Giving him the authority. He worked with a representative to pass legislation giving him more authority. That man shouldn't have more authority over anything. He needs to stick to his job and what the exact job description of the Attorney General of Washington State is. The Attorney General of Washington State's job is not to continuously give himself more and more and more power over everything. Okay? So the state reference in 1639, I went over that in detail in another video, but it essentially amounts to giving the Attorney General the right to approve, the authority to approve or deny firearms sales, firearm transfers, concealed carry licenses, and even to go in and revoke them. Okay, so now the man has power over our guns. He has power over our state legislators. He's attacking the president and trying to establish power over the president. All right, what does this say to you? To me, this says he's power hungry, right? He doesn't have the interests of people of Washington State in mind. Not a bit. All his talk about the dreamers, all his talk about the veterans, all of that, it's a ploy. Look at me, look at what I'm doing, look at all the good things I'm doing, look at how successful I am, look at how smart I am. Yet when I asked him a simple question about the state reference in 1639, he didn't know anything about, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. His presentation at Eastern Washington University, this is where I'm going with this, was the same one given to Gonzaga students in 2017. The presentation at Gonzaga was heavily covered by the media. All right. Now I went through the content of it. It's the exact same one, the exact same speech, save for the changing of the amount of lawsuits he's filed. All right. Same jokes. All right. He posted about that presentation on Facebook, right? He posted about it on his own Facebook, on his public officer Facebook, you know, the page as opposed to the profile. Yet November 30th of this year at Eastern Washington University, he gave the same exact presentation entitled Challenging the President of the United States. Okay, that's what his entire presentation was about. Was about a lawsuit against lawsuits against the President of the United States and the Trump administration. He went into a little bit of detail about how to file them. And he showed a few pictures of him with other various bigwigs, and of him with a couple of dreamers. You know, talked about what politics is like at his family holiday tables. So the presentation at EWU, I looked for it everywhere. I looked for it. Nothing in the Spokesman Review, nothing on the Eastern Washington University website, Nothing in the student news. Nothing on his Facebook. Nothing about it anywhere. During that presentation is when I asked the question about the authority of the state. But, you know, I have my conclusions on that. I draw my own conclusion with that. He's hiding something. What is he hiding? What is he afraid of? Why wouldn't he answer that simple question? Why is he launching all of these lawsuits on behalf of the state of Washington, the people of the state of Washington? He's really big on the people. Why is he giving himself more and more and more power? That brings me to another question, okay? This one I actually had written in my notes. Why is Bob Ferguson holding everyone but himself accountable? Does he think he is above that accountability? Now, here's where it might get touchy for some of you, okay? Is he a narcissist or a sociopath? All right, so basically narcissism, I don't know how many of you know much about psychology, but I studied it quite a bit. Narcissism is, they're very grandiose. They're very, me, look at me, they have to have admirers. They need attention. They need positive attention. They constantly have to be in the spotlight, and they need constant reassurance to themselves because they have very low self-esteem. All right, give me 1 second. To go into a little bit more detail. All right. The DSM-5, I am looking at right now, the DSM-5's diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. Okay. Narcissistic personality disorder is defined as comprising a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, a constant need for admiration, and a lack of empathy, beginning by early childhood and present in a variety of contexts, as indicated by the presence of at least 5 of the following 9 criteria. Grandiose sense of self-importance, a preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. A belief that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high-status people or institutions. A need for excessive admiration, a sense of entitlement, interpersonally exploitive behavior. He exploits others. A lack of empathy, envy of others, or a belief that others are envious of him or her. Demonstration of arrogant and haughty behaviors or attitudes. All right. For a person to fit the diagnostic criteria of the DSM-5 for narcissistic personality disorder, they have to have 5 of those, at least 5. I can identify 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can identify 7 out of 9 of those behaviors. All right. So maybe he's a narcissist. You know, narcissistic personality disorder, read about it. That's all I can tell you. Narcissistic personality disorder is commonly associated with gaslighting techniques, with emotional abuse, constantly trampling on the rights of others and feeling justified in doing so, feeling like the narcissist feels as though they shouldn't have to justify themselves to anybody. And when they're confronted, they always turn it around using guilt, manipulation. They always turn it around onto the person that's confronting them. Very similar to what his response to the Republicans' inquiry into the lawsuits that he'd filed. Very, very similar. Okay. These people are excellent at obtaining positions of power because they're very charming, they're very glib, they're very intelligent. They always have ulterior motives, always. They have an uncanny ability when they are directly questioned or challenged to redirect, claim to not understand the question, etc., etc., etc. They take things very, very, very personally when they're challenged. The recent uprising about 1639, we're pissed. We're starting to speak out. Well, Bob Ferguson's response was, I'm going to reintroduce every anti-gun bill. He's retaliating against us. That's retaliation. He's taking it personal. Okay, you going to fight me on this? Okay, well then guess what? I'm going to take all your guns. That's what that sounds like to me. It needs to be looked into. That needs to be looked into, because nobody with those types of disorders should have this much power over the citizens of any state or country. None. I've said it before, and I've said it, and I'll say it again. I believe in a couple of my previous videos, I know I compared him to a dictator. Hitler was a narcissist. They want to call us Nazis? Ferguson is exhibiting the exact same, according to the DSM-5, the exact same behaviors. Is that who we want leading our state? He's running for governor in 2020. I believe that this needs to be looked into. He needs to be investigated on this. All right. So now I'm going to get to the recall. Article 1, Section 33 of the Washington State Constitution. All right. I'm going to look at it on my phone again because there was too much to there was too much to all right, give me 1 second. There was too much for me to write down like that. I just have to remember where I put it. But recall is essentially the way that the citizens can fire someone they've elected. All right. The citizens of Washington are granted the authority to perform a recall election by sections 33 and 34 of Article 1 of the Washington State Constitution to all elective officers of the state of Washington except judges. Grounds for recall. All right. This Constitution says a recall can only occur if the targeted public official has engaged in the commission of some act or acts of I have a hard time with that word. misvians. Okay, there's Malsvians and misvians. I'm not sure I pronounced that right, but we're going to focus on the second one. All right, this is where the possibility of the recall could have come in. The commission of some act or acts of M word 1 and M word 2 while in office who has violated his oath of office. Okay, so now we're going to look up the definition of misvians, okay? The incorrect, improper, or wrongful performance of a lawful act. All right? Greg, yes, we do need a constitutional sheriff to arrest Ferguson as an enemy of the people. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Now, in the Wexlaw Dictionary for Cornell University, the definition is the incorrect, improper, or wrongful performance of a lawful act. The incorrect, improper, or wrongful performance of a lawful act. Incorrect and improper, continually pushing gun legislation, expanding his own power, and all the while using our tax dollars to go after the President of the United States, and then refusing to answer for his actions, refusing to explain himself. I think that falls under the category of misfiends. But I'm not a lawyer. So, in a recall, to get a recall petition, what we have to do, we have to get 800,000 signatures on the petition. And we have to list very, very, very specific instances of these acts. Now, I have a couple that I think might work, but again, I'm not a lawyer. All right. I'm going to keep digging on this. I'm going to keep digging into Ferguson. Flat out, I'm going to. Someone has to. And, you know, why not me? Why not Greg? Why not Scott? Why not any of us? Or better yet, why not all work together? This man is running for governor. I don't want a narcissist governing my state. I don't want a narcissist anywhere near my government or my Second Amendment. I didn't say a whole lot about the Second Amendment tonight because there's a whole lot being said about it. I support it 100%. This man, Bob Ferguson, is 100% wrong. And anybody else who stands like him is wrong. We have the constitutional right to bear arms. It doesn't say you have the constitutional right to bear arms if you can pass a background check and a mental health check. It says you have the constitutional right to bear arms. Our forefathers put that in there to protect us in the future from tyrannical government, just like Ferguson, just like the other Democratic leaders, not trying to divide along party lines, but primarily, and the Republican leaders that are trying to take away our guns. You know? What about our freedom of speech? What about our freedom of religion? What about those things? Okay, we're focusing on guns right now, but mark my words, they take our guns, the rest of it's going. That's what I have for you guys tonight. Thank you for watching. Remember, I do live broadcasts every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8:30 p.m. The next one will be on Monday. And all my live videos, for the sake of keeping them from being taken down, I'm going to be posting them on YouTube as well. We have a YouTube channel. The link is in the page description. Thank you guys. I'll have some more for you. Greg, we should talk for sure. Reach out to Tim, for sure. But we have to stop this, man. We have to. All right, you guys, have a good night. And again, last thing, my little fact-checking disclaimer. Please fact-check me. If you feel the need to, please fact-check me. I get most of my information about the legislative process and such directly off of the state legislature's website. My definitions I get from the Cornell University Wex dictionary. A lot of my information I get from encyclopedias. So some of it, very little of it, I get off the internet. Okay? But go ahead and fact check the things I say. Ask questions. Look into it yourself. You know, it's all right there at your fingertips. Look into it yourself. I would encourage you to do that. You can be educated too. Knowledge is power. Good night, guys.